I know our students oftentimes feel like applying for a role is just a black hole and they don't know what's happening. Can you kind of maybe walk us through the process for like a successful, I'm interested in a role to I'm being onboarded?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
I'll give you both. I'm going to give you some extra credit here. I'm going to give you the story behind the scenes from a company perspective. And I'm also going to give you tips for each stage of the candidate life cycle from a candidate perspective.
Students are taking notes.
Okay.
Go.
Welcome back to UNHIREABLE, your podcast for an honest take on early career. I'm Miley Sue, one of the producers, and today I'm in the studio with Matt, and we're joined by a special guest, Therasa Cha, who is the Director of Emerging Talent at T-Mobile and brings over 15 years of experience in talent acquisition and HR leadership across major tech companies. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. I echo Miley's sentiments. Thank you so much for making this happen. Thank you for joining us. We've got a ton of questions, so I'm just going to hop into it because your role, emerging talent, is one of these spots where our students are like, can you just do a behind the curtains talk? What are the secrets? I'm like, so we're doing some secret sauce recipes today.
We can do all the secret sauce recipes.
Not all, I mean, we keep a few secrets just as needed.
I'm all about transparency.
Okay. So I know Miley just introduced your official title, but can you tell me about your role at T-Mobile? What does work look like for you there?
Yeah, absolutely. So role as Director of Emerging Talent at T-Mobile is really about helping enable future leaders within the company. And future leaders really taking that next step or next chapter on their journey. So a good example of the areas that we have is we have direct to full-time hiring from colleges or universities, which is very, very traditional. We have what I call the summer internship program. So that's the 11 to 12-week internship programs that are full-time convertible eligible or intern to intern. And then we have a couple unique sectors as well as we continue to build out our chapters. One is our internal internship program that's called Magenta Accelerator, where we actually bring people from, the call center background or the frontline retail background and give them a chance after their continuing education to intern for corporate roles and apprenticeships as well.
I love that your color palette is definitely interwoven to all these things, pink and magenta. You are definitely T-Mobile.
We do have a couple, fun fact, we do have some colors that I believe are copyrighted in the shades of magenta at T-Mobile. I believe there's 2 shades.
I could see that. That's awesome. So it sounds like in that work, you've just got your fingers in so many different areas of where people engage in roles and opportunities. So I'm excited for our students and our audiences to hear sort of the variation amongst that. So I feel like some of the questions hopefully we'll get to can give them more insights around that.
Absolutely.
So I know we talked about this when we had our first connection. T-Mobile is definitely an AI-focused company. What does that actually mean in day-to-day work?
Yeah, I would say we are definitely very passionate about AI and enabling AI journeys within our company. I think one thing I like to say or describe it as is you want everyone to feel like they are at the center of the universe, but that every employee has a 100-person army at their back. And that's what AI can really help you do, is be that enabler of your own personal success, whether it's personal or professional in their journey. One way I've seen T-Mobile do it that I personally really love is we have an enterprise-wide ChatGPT license. And yes, it is so powerful.
Oh, very jealous.
Yes, it is amazing. It is amazing. And we're able to use it in a variety of different areas. So I've used it to help me kind of brainstorm and have like a committee to help me make decisions by, because you can put personas into ChatGPT to be like your sounding board. I've used it to help me draft or redraft before I send an email, just speeding that up. I've even used it to help me cut down on 300 emails in less than an hour from a work perspective.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, I love it.
I know you just spoke to this, but can you give me like a project or initiative where AI has made a really tangible difference at T-Mobile? You gave me some really good examples of how it's used day to day, but like maybe more project-based or larger scale.
Project-based one that I've really liked with it these days. What have we done? So one of the things we did in recruiting lately is we did an AI-focused workshop, kind of like a mini hackathon in a day. And this was run by our AI learning team
Okay.
that also reports into the broader talent excellence team I'm a part of. And what they did is they got a group of super users, and super users just being people who used ChatGPT the most, into a room to start, in essence, hacking on what are some of the major problems you face in recruiting. And they developed, can't say I remember them all, but they developed over 8 different solutions where they build applications for recruiters to use. One was building out interview guides. Another was building out kickoffs, just different things like that to make their daily lives easier. Because usually building an interview guide, if it's a custom one, can take up to an hour or two per role. But when you have this, it actually puts it in the hands of the hiring manager, and it can be done in less than 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And that's just a simple, easy one that we use in recruiting even.
Were the super users from all different roles within the organization, or
Just all within recruiting.
just within recruiting?
And the
Okay.
really cool thing with that workshop is they got to learn how to build apps that same day.
But they're not necessarily technical, like
Not at
software
all.
engineers or anything
Not
like
at
that.
all. These are recruiters.
Oh my
so
gosh.
they don't really use technology at all in their day-to-day, except for the applicant tracking system, stuff like that.
Right. But in this
This workshop.
hackathon workshop, right, you came up with these solutions that have made their lives easier.
And they did it themselves within a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's got to be pretty empowering for them too.
Incredibly empowering. And I
Yeah.
think that's the beauty of things like AI these days.
Yeah.
Is it's not just about the person who codes the AI and makes those amazing things like an Alexa that's in your house. It's about the people who learn how to use AI to the max of its potential in their day-to-day lives.
I love that, learning how to use it,
Yeah.
not just knowing.
And I think that's a big misnomer when you think about companies these days. And they're talking about being, AI focused, or they have to have AI in every role. It isn't that they expect every single person to be able to code AI. It is about people being excited and leaning into AI
Yeah.
to enable success.
Yeah. I think we're finding that on campus as well.
Good.
Where we can find folks to lean in and think about, is there a way I can leverage this? Because
Yeah.
it's a powerful tool. I mean, you're exemplar right there when you talk about people giving themselves tools to make work easier, more efficient, more enjoyable. you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've even heard about it in interviews. I won't say which companies or where, but I've had conversations with peers in my industry where interviewers are even expecting, as long as a student gets the okay and the blessing, for people to use AI to enable their coding solutions. Because that's what they're doing in their day-to-day jobs right now, whether
Right.
it's Claude, et cetera.
Do you think that there is a tension? I'm speaking, here on campus, we have some faculty that are fully adopting AI, getting their students to use it in so many different innovative ways.
How
and
cool.
we love that. And we definitely have some folks who are reluctant, who are seeing AI as a threat, or they only conceive of it when students use it to cheat or something like that. Is there a tension in the corporate space still around sort of adoption and use? Because that example you just gave sort of speaks to, like, am I using it the right way, or is this
Yeah.
the right setting for it, or something
Yeah.
like that?
I don't think there's tension in that sense in corporate of
Okay.
am I using it in an ethical way per se. A lot of people are, professionally mature enough to ask. If
Yeah.
if they have a question, ask. And that's the biggest advice I give a student. If you're not sure how your professor is going to feel about something or the company you're interning with, just ask first
Yeah.
before you do it. And you may be surprised how often people will lean in, especially if you get that permission first.
Yeah.
What I've seen more so, I think, in corporate is questions on the effectiveness of AI. Like, is this actually going to make my job easier? And most of the time, the answer is yes, but we are still discovering there's areas where it's no. A good example is PowerPoints. I love my AI to help me think through how my deck could look.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let AI design my slide.
I hear you.
Learned that lesson.
Understood. This is all really great. Thinking now, shifting into like some of these emerging new hires when you bring people on, what qualities or habits stand out for you in new hires who really adapt and thrive quickly?
Growth mindset is the first one that comes to mind. And I know I'm heralding back to some of my other past days, but the thing I think I love best that I've heard as a quote is, you will always lean into hiring a learn-it-all versus a know-it-all. Because if you hire a know-it-all, they're not going to learn anything more. If you hire a learn-it-all, they're still on that learning journey.
Okay.
And so I encourage individuals to lean into having a curious growth mindset, having what they call a humble mindset too. So being willing to admit and own your mistakes. The number one place I get students caught up in is when somebody asks a question such as, we all make mistakes. The key is learning something from it. Tell me about a time you made a mistake and you learned something. It's very easy to not want to admit a mistake or say something very softball like, I'm a perfectionist or I work too hard. But really, the companies are looking for that really heavy mistake that you can cite the learning you had from.
Well, and I will say, not in their defense, but here on campus, right, they don't have that capacity. Like they can't make critical errors when taking midterms or submitting final papers. Like they are held to sort of that level of perfection, whereas the real world, as we know, work is evolving. Problems are evolving. You have to adapt to them. And so having those stories is one thing that we encourage our students to think, if the classroom isn't going to give you opportunities, where can you draw those stories from? Because recruiters and folks that you work with.
A project, partnering with someone, student orgs, even personal life. Some of the best stories I've heard have been people who have realized maybe they've overextended themselves in walking through what they've gone through. Or maybe someone who's had a difficult project partner and having that crucial conversation with them. Those are some of the strongest stories I'll see in those conversations.
That's great. That gives me hope for those students who, like when we tell them you've got a group project coming up, the dread of it, oh no, not a, well, where's the dread coming from? Because there's probably a good story there, right? Like
time. At least that was mine when I was going after my master's. It was the time involved with the group project.
Right. And the cat wrangling or however you're trying to deal with it. That's super helpful. And again, it situates, because here at Gesture, one of the things we talk with our students a lot about is if school is the only thing you're good at, then the only job you're qualified for is student when you're done.
Yeah.
Versus school and college is this time when you actually get to experiment and try things out and deep dive into things you thought you never would have exposure to. And I think you can, again, going to the stories that we're trying to make sure they come to you with about, learn it all versus know it all. I mean, all these ways. How do we get those experiences baked into this side of what we're doing with them here? So that's sort of some of our work.
And it's a good call out because I think student is a mindset that you can have for life. Whether you are in school, whether you're in a company, continuing to want to learn from those around you, being curious and deep diving into areas with stretch projects or assignments, that can be one of the things that enables your success the most in your future, honestly.
Yeah. I like to ask students to go out and ask friends, family, anyone who's a working professional, how many of them got a syllabus on their first day of work, right? Like how many times at work is someone telling you exactly what to do, exactly how to do it, when to do it? There is no syllabus.
I was going to say they're lucky if they have an onboarding doc.
I won't go into the poor onboarding policies of certain orgs, but yes, exactly. Okay, so this sort of brings up this space of this transition from college to career, which is where we're trying to get our students as best prepared and ready for that as possible. What are college grads doing right these days when it comes to preparing for the workforce?
Being unapologetically, authentically themselves.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is by being yourself, you're bringing perspectives, insights, and personas into work that can help enable the success of the product or service that you're creating. And I think that's both important from the company value standpoint, but also important for them as a person in finding the right company for them, the right environment, and the right benefits to support them in their future.
Do you think there have been times when students feel like they have to tamp down their authentic selves in order to fit like an expectation during the interview process? Okay.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely that, and absolutely not just students. I'd say anyone in life. If you think about corporate, there's your work persona self and there's your personal persona self. But I think one of the things that we see with students these days is they're much more brave, I'd use the phrase, to be themselves. And that helps companies understand how to better support them because they're willingly sharing that information. That transparency is key. So if we know that people like things such as, for example, with students going back into office, but in a hybrid environment where they still have flexibility, that can be something that companies can choose to offer or not to offer.
Right.
But they do it with knowledge versus, going down a path and not realizing they're making people miserable.
Yeah.
So that's where authenticity and transparency is really powerful, is it allows people to know where each other's at in a way that can lead to thoughtful choices.
Sometimes, to follow up on that, students feel like, there are taboo or some questions that are just off the table in terms of engaging with an organization, like during the job search process. How would you sort of tell them to professionally test the waters and stay authentic in that space?
Good question. So one thing I've done, and this was when I used to do table talks at Grace Hopper's, and it was I jokingly called it the dating game, choosing the right company for you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I would say is look at what is most important to you, and then look at things like benefits, for example. Because sometimes you will see in the benefits, in the company statements, in the articles, little pieces of what makes that company that company.
Mm-hmm.
A great example is, per se, maybe you want to see how they think about equality or women.
Mm-hmm.
And you might look at things such as paternity leave benefits. It's not that you need them today, but it's something that speaks long term to how they think about those different spaces.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way I would recommend doing it.
Yeah. I feel like our students across the board could do a better job about learning more about organizations or companies that they're applying to in the internship or full-time space.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that's where you can use AI to help you with that journey. So turning it back to kind of that topic, AI can be really interesting to superpower that sort of a thing. So you could go to AI. I used to have them do this, writing it down and with a partner. But you could go to AI and say, these are the top 5 things I am holding true of what I want in my future job or what's important to me. Can you please go and find for me the top 10 companies that prioritize these 5 things and build out a table for me? And then you can go and gather information through your interviews, input it, and then have it help you make that decision even.
Yeah.
Without using a person.
Yeah.
Because I usually used to have a person, like a mother, a friend, hold true on these are the things you found most valuable. Because sometimes money talks and it's easy to get enamored.
Yeah.
But when you have AI to do that, that can just be another sounding block.
Yeah. AI as a partner in terms of the job search process, refining your story, working on your LinkedIn page or your resume, cover letters. It's just so adept at having this well-versed sounding board to go through, just like you said.
Exactly.
You have a powerful partner there. Take advantage of it.
Exactly. And the other thing I'd say is it's like any other tool you use. What you put in is what you get out. So the people who don't use AI a lot or don't correct AI are going to get the very generic tool.
Yeah.
Those who work with AI, feed it different things, help adapt it, are going to be much more powerful, and it's going to be designed to their voice and their needs. So, for example, my husband's AI sounds completely different than my AI.
Right.
And it's because of how he has attuned it, talked to it, and worked with it.
We had a student present to a group of faculty just recently here, and there were definitely some skeptics, some faculty who were very concerned about privacy, which is a valid concern, of course.
Yeah.
And a student whose parents bought them pro GPT access in junior high because they were of that age when it was first available. And he said to this group, he said, I just use ChatGPT, because it knows who I am. When I need someone to summarize my experiences, my questions, my research, my work, it's the one that has been, on my side, helping me through these different ventures as I've come up, graduated from high school, started college. So it's interesting to think that a personal tie-in and a tool that knows you well can be leveraged to your advantage moving forward, right?
Exactly. And just like in a person, I'd say, AI has its faults. It does hallucinate, as we like to say, or it uses what sources are available. But that's where you can, just like a person, question it. Ask it to share what sources it has. Make sure you're going and clicking and double-checking, especially if it's for a school project. Those basic things to make sure it's still valid.
Yeah.
And if it's not, correct it so
Totally.
it can learn.
Just another side note for some of our really skeptical students here, and I've definitely encountered a few of them. I support their skepticism, but I would, just as you were situating it, ask them to be informed skeptics. Know what those limitations are. Know what you're talking about, rather than just saying, I'm never going to touch it because I just don't trust it at all.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I can say, regardless of company or corporate, please lean into it. Like, I cannot say enough, please lean into AI, because AI will always be a tool of the future. Because when you look across AI, it's not that AI is replacing jobs, but you will see probably that people who have AI skills may be replacing people who do not have AI skills. Just like the journey with other software in the past and people having Office skills or not. People who had Windows Office skills replaced people who did not have those skills. I think AI is going to be one of those skills in the future that will be necessary regardless of what job you're in.
Yeah, I love that. I will help you spread that advice. That's why we're recording this. So on the flip side, we were just talking about some of the things that people are doing right, which I love. Are there some things that you wish more students understood or worked on before applying to the roles?
I think one of the things I said is customizing it or working with your AI. I can tell when you haven't done that because every single resume is going to sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
Just like the basic Word resume. So do what you can to lean into making that AI voice. If you're going to use it, be authentically you. Otherwise, it's going to be very generic. It's going to look like everybody else's.
Yep.
And it's probably not going to get as deep as you want it to in that space.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing is like any tool, definitely leverage it and go beyond beginner.
How about outside of AI use? Just because a lot of our students are in this space of, am I doing it right? Am I preparing myself for this? What are some other things you wish students were doing, especially in that time when they're still undergraduates, in order to become better, more viable candidates for roles?
I'm going to start breaking down some myths then.
Okay.
So be prepared.
I'm ready.
This is going to be the painful spot.
Okay.
Your resume doesn't have to be a page. That's the first thing I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
So it hurts me when you leave out great things because you tried to keep your resume a page.
Okay.
And some of those great things are the ones that maybe would have made you stand out, like your volunteer experience. Maybe it's that side hustle where you owned your own company, but you thought because you're in software engineering and that was a bow tie business, you didn't want to do it. That's going to impact you because that could have really separated you from other people and showed other elements of character.
Okay.
So number one, it doesn't have to be a page.
All right.
Number two, do give us your whole self like that. Like it's not just about your projects, your work experience, and your school studies. It is about you authentically well-rounded as you. Maybe you volunteered to do Taekwondo and you were like a black belt and a leader. That shows leadership. Shows teamwork. It shows patience if you were teaching students. Those are things that will stand out that maybe you didn't realize do stand out because we're looking at those soft skills. I'm going to go further. Cover letters. Unless a company explicitly asks for a cover letter, you don't need to do it.
Okay.
In fact, I don't know if someone's going to look at it unless they explicitly say.
Yeah.
And that's just the honest truth there.
Yeah. Yep.
And then the third one, I used to say that early was key. And that means, and you saw this move where once upon a time, all the career fairs were maybe October, November. And then they kind of started pushing up more and more into September. Some different places like ASU even got it into late August. And that's because there was this time when jobs were filled, 90% of them, before December.
Okay.
That's not the world we live in anymore.
Okay.
And so I'd say be patient with yourself. Know that it is a marathon, not a sprint when it's looking for roles. And don't just go heavy in the beginning, but draw yourself out and keep looking. Because otherwise, I think you might burn yourself out.
Yeah. So this is all foreshadowing something that is definitely part of the lore here, which is AI is just decimating early career jobs. That first rung of the ladder is being removed, that those roles don't exist anymore. What's your take on that?
You know, I see a lot of articles that say that, and honestly, they're a pet peeve of mine.
Okay.
Just personally.
Okay.
Bloomberg says it. I think Fortune said it. There's a couple others. Maybe The Times said it. But it's not that AI is replacing jobs. I think AI is enabling jobs, and those jobs are being shifted to more high-value activities.
Okay.
That are still, I think, applicable for students because there's this misnomer that early in career means low experience. It's not the case. It's just different experience.
Okay.
Because as students, you have to see the value of yourself that you are bringing cutting-edge skills straight from schools. You are bringing fresh ideas and innovation and perspective that are often going to be the customer market that these companies are targeting.
Right.
And those are going to be invaluable to the future. And so rather than thinking of it as cutting out jobs, I think it's just shifting what the jobs look like and how much more skills they might need in different spaces. That's why I push really hard for students to focus on gaining AI skills, because there will be workers who have been in the industry 10, 20 years who don't have AI skills.
Right.
And the companies will need those that do have it.
Right.
And those will hopefully be coming from schools.
Yeah. Also, and this is sort of encouraging for the entire workforce, AI is open to everyone, right?
Exactly.
So I've seen some very seasoned professionals be early adopters, high users, regardless of years in job or something like that. So
Spot on.
it's not necessary. And this is interesting. This is why when I see that student who's like, I'm not touching it, I'm not going anywhere near it, I feel like you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, because there are a ton of people out there across the range of roles and experiences who are putting themselves out there.
And you absolutely are putting yourself at a disadvantage if you don't do it.
Yeah, which is telling. So I want to ask a follow-up question, because it's not getting rid of that rung, it's just changing what that first rung is like. And this is going back to an earlier question about what students can prepare for, but because of that, some of the experiences or duties, roles, tasks probably are changed in that space now if the first rung is a different rung on a ladder. Can you speak to what some of those changes might look like in day-to-day work?
Yeah, and this is me hypothesizing
Sure.
a little bit. Bear with me.
Yeah.
A good example, well, maybe I'll use an example I had. So I didn't realize that my AI could take resume books and parse out those resumes for me, or help me at least surface, because resume books are PDFs that can have hundreds of resumes in them.
Okay.
And they're not separate into each page, which can be really painful if you want to get to that page. But AI could do that for me. It could separate it out of a PDF and turn it into the individual pages, so then I could attach it to interviews or attach it to a profile. Rather than a person having to go and print those and then upload scans of each individual resume, they could just upload it into AI and have it do it for them.
Okay. Which means the actual work, the interfacing, and this is what you were speaking to earlier, right? Like, be prepared for some of those, I'll just say, more menial tasks they're put by the wayside, which means human connection or things that are higher level might come earlier in career for folks.
And that's what it would enable is, so if a recruiter was stuck doing that, it would enable them to have more recruiter screens, being able to spend more time having maybe closing conversations with candidates, enable them to have times where they get together perhaps with their interns and have some meaningful conversations. That allows more of what I would say is this consultative approach versus the manual activities. For software, for example, I could imagine it might help them with testing their code sometimes, or might at least give them, maybe a sample code that they could then go and validate, and after ideating, build upon, just similar to how we do with non-tech stuff. And once they implement that, that allows them more time to go to things like having some meaningful sprint conversations, their stand-ups, those other meetings that maybe they were starting to skip because there was no time in their day because it was being used in other areas.
Right.
Because it doesn't necessarily, it's not that AI is enabling things so much that there's a lack of value in having conversation.
Right.
There's still value in people coming together
Yeah.
and having those discussions.
I mean, I just know from my own work, the amount of time it has saved me for things like, let's have a brainstorming session with colleagues, or let's make sure that I'm fully aware and attentive in meetings, because I'm not thinking about all the things that I have to catch up on because I'm inundated with work. I mean, it clears off some of that space for you to be more present, to be more accountable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish people knew that. But so I know our students oftentimes feel like the applying for a role is just a black hole and they don't know what's happening. They don't know what's happening. Can you kind of maybe walk us through the process for like a successful, I'm interested in a role, to I'm being onboarded? What does that look like? What are those stages? And what is the sort of, again, students love the behind the curtain story. So as much as you can share, we'd love to hear it.
I'll give you both. I'm going to give you some extra credit here. I'm going to give you the story behind the scenes from a company perspective, And I'm also going to give you tips for each stage of the candidate life cycle from a
Okay.
candidate perspective.
Students are taking notes.
Okay.
Go.
So let's start with what happens at a company perspective. So when you, student A, apply to a role, you are one of thousands applying. Right now, they're referring to the early in career stage, so the campus recruiting stage very specifically,
Yeah.
as the application avalanche. Because with AI, with technology, one of the pros and the cons is people can apply now more than ever to different roles, which is, on one hand, fantastic.
Right.
On the other hand, it can be rough because depending on the company, they may or may not have AI on their side to help them to weed through all those resumes. A lot of companies are still going and looking through resumes one by one with a person.
Right.
And so when you're having someone who's taking weeks or months to get back to you, for the weeks, it's nothing about you.
Yeah.
It is about the thousands they are having to go through at once. So that is one side of it. Now, if it's taking months, the reason being is in campus recruiting, it is a cycle. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Usually they're not hiring for one role. They are hiring for hundreds of roles. And if they're not responding, that actually might not be a bad thing because they could be going through and getting ready while some people are doing final rounds and waiting to see how they pan out and then looping you into the process. So never hurts just to check in.
Okay.
Then once you actually get contacted, that's when things speed up quite a bit. The first contact, typically you're going to go through what's called a recruiter interviewer screen. That one is going to be focused on probably verifying some basic qualifications, making sure that they match up from what you entered because we know application processes can be a little confusing sometime with the wording. And then also asking some questions based on leadership principles, some of the soft skills at a company.
Okay.
If you pass that recruiter screen, because it's a pass thing, like you got to still do well at it, then usually you're going to go through hiring manager and skills-based interviews for the roles. Depending on the company, that's going to be between 1 and 3. Those are all typically going to be virtual in nature.
Okay.
And from there, they debrief and make a hiring decision. That whole process maybe takes 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
So I know it feels like a long wait and a fast speed up.
Yeah.
Then you get your offer. And then the big silence begins again before you start.
Okay.
A lot of companies are working on addressing that. They're working on things such as more transparency on the front end. They're working on things such as one thing we're putting in place is post-offer engagement, so touch points every single month just to make you feel like we're there
Yeah.
as you wait for joining your internship or full-time offer. But that's the behind the scenes that happens with companies.
Okay.
Nothing too magical.
Yeah.
Pretty cut and dry.
Yep.
The biggest thing is just, again, the volume is what kind of impacts the beginning of that story.
Okay.
Now let's talk through the life of a successful candidate going through that process and ways you can enable that success. First thing at the apply, don't be generic. So again, just like we were talking with AI earlier, we can tell when you are applying to 100 roles at once versus you really care about us. And a good example is if you get my name wrong. That's what I'm going to notice really early.
Yep.
That you're using a template, which
Yep.
I get. I'm actually not going to judge you for that. It's just going to make me laugh probably.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that other recruiters are going to feel the same way.
Okay.
I don't know. So a successful candidate is focusing and being able to speak to the role that they are most interested in. And they do better because they are tying their skills and experience to specifically what is in the job description. So just take that extra time to feed your resume in, feed that JD in, and have ChatGPT update and give you a couple points.
Yeah. Okay.
Or whatever is your AI of your choice.
Totally.
So that's one.
Okay.
Then after you apply through the career website. I know it's really tempting to reach out to a recruiter on LinkedIn and reach out to a bunch of them, but actually apply through the career website because that is something you must legally do in order to be considered. Then once you are selected, from there, make sure that you're looking at the leadership principles of a company. So that means going on their website, seeing whatever term they call principles, competencies, values, etc. Look them up and define for yourself a couple star interview examples for each one.
Okay.
So for example, let's say there's a customer obsession one.
Okay.
I'm going to pull up 1 or 2 of my own examples that speak to customer obsession. And maybe it hits actually a couple principles. I'm going to tie it to every single principle that it relates to so that I could use that example as need be. That is a pro tip I use to this day when I interview. And it helps me speak to the values of the company and how I have exhibited those values. So that's one thing to prepare for. The other thing is prep your questions in advance. Every single interviewer usually asks you, do you have any questions?
Mm-hmm.
When you say, I have none, means you're not really thinking about the company or the opportunity to them.
Yeah.
Some of them may be totally fine with it. And again, some of them may not.
Right.
So something you can do, just simply do that. So one thing I always recommend, look up the news feed of the company. See what's happening with them. Pick one or two things you feel comfortable talking about and bring it up. Even if the interviewer is not able to answer it, at least it shows you're interested and you're following that company.
Yeah.
Okay. Then do that same thing for the final round interviews. And throughout the process, send a thank you letter. Doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be super detailed, but just a quick thank you can go a long way to making people feel like you just have that common courtesy for them.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all the steps I recommend to get you ready for a role.
That's
Everything
perfect.
that I use for myself
Yeah.
to this day are those things.
So let's say a student's listening to our conversation today and they want to work for an innovative company like T-Mobile in the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
You've spoken to this a little bit. What should they start doing right now? What should they do to get ready?
If they haven't already, I'd say branch out just from school and classes.
Okay.
Of course, do your school well. Like, that's number one.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're learning your curriculum, you're learning the content that you need to enable your success, because skills come first no matter where you are.
Okay.
But on top of that, branch out into other areas to really demonstrate some of those other strengths. Because in a company like T-Mobile, innovation comes from a team.
Mm-hmm.
You win and work together as a team. So finding areas where you have to work with other people, whether it's a student org, whether it's things outside of just your normal school projects, that's one thing you can start doing now and start showing on your resume. I think another thing outside of just teamwork is beginning to build your muscles on what I'd call a customer-first mindset.
Okay.
You see this across companies. I mean, try to think of a company that doesn't have a customer-first value, and it's pretty hard to find. So beginning to think through how to enable that
Mm-hmm.
in your thought process is really, really key. So whether you're working on a project, whether you're getting ready to answer an interview, if you start thinking school project backwards, what is the end state? What is the customer obsession here?
Uh-huh.
What am I enabling for something?
Mm-hmm.
That will start showing in your interview questions, and that will make magic for you.
Yeah.
And then the third one I'd say is enabling that growth mindset, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the beginning, growth mindset, embrace your mistakes, learn from them, and be excited about sharing your learnings.
Yeah.
Those are the three things I'd say you
Okay.
can do right now.
So one of the things we do here a lot is try to get students to deeply think about mission. Like, what is the mission of an organization? Whose problem are you solving?
To me, that's customer obsession.
Yeah. So I feel like that's our coding for it here, because whose problem are you solving is a different one. When a faculty member gives an assignment or a test, midterm, what have you, it's really about, we just have to interface this. The problem I'm solving is my own, which is get good grades, graduate, things like that, versus the problems that are going to be posed to you in the real world are actually going to be solving someone else's problem, not your own. And so it sounds like the more they can practice that and the earlier they can practice that, the better situated they'll be to give you stories about why they should be hired at an organization like yours.
Exactly. And same with the growth mindset. You know, be curious about seeing that bigger picture and be unafraid in asking those questions, whether it's in class, et cetera. You know, when you're doing a case study, something, you see the first perspective, but ask someone why not. If you have something you're curious about and you don't know why it wasn't that way, ask it.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you're going to grow, is to ask those questions.
Okay. Going back, because you've obviously had an amazing journey to be in a spot to speak to these things with an adeptness that
Full
I'm
of
just
mistakes, too.
all of them. That's how they all show up. What is one piece of advice you wish you had gotten when you were first starting out?
Oh, I think understanding that journeys and career pathways don't have to be a straight line.
Yeah.
So it's real rough, especially in this economy. And when I graduated, and I'm not going to give exact numbers and stuff, but
Yeah.
you know, when I entered my work career, it was around the time of the recession happening. And there was a bunch of layoffs. There was not as many roles. And after taking a turn into banking, thinking that's where I wanted to go, I went down the HR route, which has led to here. And I was a contractor, actually. And most people might be like, oh, the path to a director is something where you did multiple internships and you had this gorgeous trajectory. but not all paths are straight.
Yeah.
I've done every role in recruiting under the sun, and I don't regret one of them. Whether it's a coordinator, a recruiter, working in product management, all of those experiences have built me into the leader I am today. And what I would say is be patient with yourself and know that even if it's a stage where you're a contractor right now, because maybe the full-time role wasn't available straight out of school, not all roads are straight, and that doesn't mean that's where you're going to be in indefinitely.
Yeah.
So embrace it.
Super good advice. Therasa, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time joining us today. The insight, the candor that you brought to this conversation, I think is going to have really high impact with our students. And I just can't thank you enough. So thank you.
Oh, no. Thank you for having me here. I'm always happy to share insights. Again, it's humble opinions on a lot of this stuff, but if there's ever questions, ever reach outs, that's what we're here for.
Okay. We might take you up on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Want to hear more from Gesture? Check out the rest of the Unhireable podcast on YouTube and Spotify. For even more content, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at gesture_UW.